Ready to get the season rolling. Still another week to wait, but at least the 53-man rosters are out. Plenty of news around the NFL. We talk about it right here on the Two Deep NFL podcast. We will get into the Patriots keeping only one quarterback. We'll talk about Johnathan Taylor still being an Indianapolis Colt. Chris Jones not in Kansas City. They'll go without him. At least it looks that way right now. The Dolphins don't get a deal done with Christian Wilkins. Why not? Von Miller start on the pup list for the Bills. What's it mean for them? Trey Lance is a Cowboy, only a fourth-round pick. What's that mean for the Cowboys? What's it mean for the Niners? Joe Burrow finally came back to practice. Still no contract. Is that going to be a problem for the Bengals as the season goes along? We talk about it right now on the Two Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. As we get things rolling here, we will also talk about the NFC West as our man Roxy Bernstein will join us. Westwood One. He works with the game in San Francisco, ESPN. You hear him all over the place. We'll talk to Roxy Bernstein here in a minute about the NFC West. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro with you as we get things started here on a busy Wednesday. We usually come your way on a Tuesday. We're here on a Wednesday. If you're catching us via the podcast later on, remember you can be part of the conversation, be in the chat room. If you're with us when we stream live, doing it tonight on a Wednesday. Jeff, just real quick before we bring Roxy in here and talk NFC West, anything jump at you? Anything surprise you about the roster construction? 32 teams, 53 guys each. Anything jump at you, blow you away?
I mean, overall around the league?
Yeah, around the league. Anything in particular?
Well, certainly we're going to talk about this, but the Patriots having one quarterback is interesting.
Yeah, at the least.
Way to go about it.
At most one.
That's right. Yeah.
At most one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that before, but hey, I haven't seen a special teams coach and a defensive coordinator running the offense before. So that was the first time for that last year. So I think every year Bill Belichick is giving us something new to talk about at this point in the season.
He's redefining addition by subtraction.
Well, and that certainly worked, right? Last year, what more could you ask for if you were a Patriots fan than what he ended up giving you, right? Yeah. It all worked beautifully. How could you question after the Patricia thing worked so well, right? Let's try the one quarterback. Like, is that not the epitome of starting to believe? The Cowboys had one quarterback, I think, at this time last year. I can't remember when they added a second one. So they did do this as well. But is this not the epitome of starting to, like, I think it's always a sign that you're in trouble when you're a veteran guy and you start to believe your own BS. Like, I think that's an issue. And I will wonder aloud if that's Bill Belichick right now.
Well, it's strange because Bailey Zappi had value, right? I mean, he was a guy who had played in games. He was a guy who at one point people thought maybe he could push Mack Jones for this job. He was a player who could help your team. And so I don't know if it was just a case of I need to have this.
Started him last year, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's a case of him saying, Mack Jones, all the talk, all the noise around you, you're my guy. But you can also do that and have a backup quarterback. You know, it doesn't have to be just you. Just you in the room. That's a very, very quiet quarterback room right now.
Yeah. All right, let's talk NFC West. Our buddy Roxy Bernstein joins us here on the Two Deep podcast. A man who's covered a lot of football, certainly knows the Niners, the NFC West forward and backwards. Roxy, thanks for joining us, buddy. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Soren. How are you guys?
Pretty good. How you doing? Great.
Pretty good. And I think we've got, the good news is I don't know what we're going to ask you about the Cardinals. I'll leave that to someone else. I have literally nothing to ask you about the Cardinals, but the Niners are the most intriguing team. And we mentioned we're going to talk about Trey Lance. I'll give a team credit for when they admit a mistake. That's what they did. They got a 4th-round pick for a guy that they gave a lot for, but they've decided that it's time to move on. I commend them for saying, okay, this isn't going to work here. But did they get it right, or did they make a knee-jerk reaction and move away from Trey Lance too early? Did they move away from a guy who could develop into a productive backup?
Well, if they're trading him to one of their arch rivals, which they did, and the Niners sending Trey Lance to the Cowboys, that must tell you what they think about Trey Lance. And that tells me they don't think he can play. Because if you're going to send him to somebody like the Cowboys, that leads you to believe that there was no future with Trey Lance. And clearly Brock Purdy is the guy. And you and I talked in your radio show, Soren, that they do believe in Sam Darnold as a quality, solid backup. So they feel pretty good about the quarterback position. But John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, they mortgage their future. They're going to pay for this down the road. They gave up 3 first-round draft picks to move up and draft Trey Lance. It didn't work. It's one thing to own it, but it's another thing then to have to deal with the consequences of a huge mistake, which they made.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Roxy, I say on the same topic, looking back now, where do you think it went wrong for Trey Lance in San Francisco?
Jeffrey, unfortunately, the injuries played a huge part for him, right? Because his development, his growth was stunted. And then while he was on the sideline, Brock Purdy just took off, went 7-1 as the starting quarterback, and got the 49ers to the NFC Championship game and took the job away. The injuries, I think, really hurt Trey Lance. The other thing that was a concern before he even came to the 49ers was the very limited experience he had at quarterback, whether it was at North Dakota State, whether it was in high school. He didn't play that much, and there wasn't that much to go on. It was a huge risk and gamble by the 49ers, and it didn't work. And then you invest the number 3 overall pick, who gets sped past by a guy that was Mr. Irrelevant in the 7th round, who's now the quarterback of the future for the 49ers. Do you want to point the finger at the injuries? You can do it. The lack of reps, that also played into account, but there was no future in San Francisco anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And it was crazy how he had like 50 pass attempts in his whole college career when trailing. Like this is a quarterback for whom we have just almost no data. And, ultimately the uncertainty got to him. What do you say to people who are like, look, the Niners are, this is my opinion. The Niners are getting too much flack here for the Trey Lance deal. If you back it out and look, they put themselves in a position where the Lance outcome wasn't actually going to matter as much, and it hasn't mattered that much. They've made the conference title game both years of his career. What do you say to that opinion? Because I think while I think it's a little bit too easy to say that, it does have some merit that their team building strategies have otherwise worked.
They lucked into Brock Purdy. There's no way that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, anybody in that organization thought Purdy could do what he did. They completely lucked into that. They drafted him for a reason, but this wasn't the reason. And so I think a lot of it gets softened about the struggles of Trey Lance and the 49ers' huge mistake because of the success that Purdy had. Because if there was a huge void at quarterback, then they'd have a real problem. Like, for example, years ago, the Raiders, when they took Jamarcus Russell, number 1 overall, they took a lot of abuse, but they didn't really have somebody standing in there to take that job. Brock Purdy won this job. It's not like Trey Lance lost it. Brock Purdy went in there and won the job. And I think that softens it a bit for the 49ers because there is somebody in there they view as a franchise-type quarterback.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Niners may have lucked into him, but they did take him, and nobody else did. Everybody else had a chance, and so now they have a chance to reap the benefits. Number of people in the chat room talking about, hey, let's see him do it a second year. Was it just hot? Now they'll adjust to him. They know what he wants to do. He's going to have to be better. He's going to have to continue to grow as a quarterback. But what are the expectations for you for this team? They've got a holdout going on, with their best defensive player. That's an issue. One, do you see that getting solved anytime soon? And then we can get into the expectations.
I think it'll get solved soon. because the Niners know the importance of having Bosa back. And he's one of the dominant pass rushers in the game. And he can do something for that football team that nobody else can do. There is some urgency to get it done, maybe not necessarily from the agent because, hey, if he misses training camp, it's not that big of a deal. We're going to still get paid. The Niners know they have to get this thing done. There are concerns with the 49ers and outside of the Bosa situation. I think the offensive line is a big concern. Certainly you have Trent Williams, who's maybe the best offensive lineman in the game. But what else do you have on the offensive line? And then you lost some key parts on your defense. You did bring in Hargraves from Philadelphia, but there are some key guys that are gone. And the 49ers have some question marks still, even though they are the team to beat in the NFC West. There's still some concerns about this team moving forward. Now, they have an embarrassment of riches as far as the talent positions go offensively. When you've got Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, I mean, we can go on and on. But there are some question marks for the 49ers. They need to answer them. And number one, Soren, as you brought it up, would be getting Bosa back in the fold and get him in for week one.
You know, you rattled off a lot of guys for the Niners on offense who are really obviously terrific skill players. I want to pivot to Seattle and what they're doing defensively there, because that was as much as that was a great story last year, their defense was not very good. I mean, a lot of changes, brought in some new personnel. They're hoping that Jordan Brooks and Jamal Adams. What do you expect from that defense, and can it be back to what Pete Carroll is used to there?
Well, they've got to get better, and certainly Woolen impressed everybody last year with the job that he did with his 6 interceptions to lead the league. But that's a group that has to get better, because when Seattle won, you're right, Jeffrey, it was about the defense. For Russell Wilson to do what he did and Marshawn Lynch, it was about the defense. We know how good their offense is, and like Brock Purdy, can Geno Smith do it again? Right? With the breakout season that he had last year, and he's got some great weapons offensively with guys like Metcalf and Lockett, and they bring in Smith and Jigba. And Kenneth Walker established himself as a premier running back last year. And the offensive line was really good. But I think there has to be concern about the Seahawks defense, because that was their Achilles heel last year. Their offense is going to be good. What's going to happen on the other side of the ball? And if they're going to challenge the 49ers, it's got to be from the defense, and that has to get better.
Yeah, when you look at the other side of the ball for the Seahawks, what I really like as a bull case for this team is the fact that Geno Smith, it was like this magic carpet ride for a while, and then at the end of the season, you saw him decline a little bit in performance, and as such, they went out and they go, get Jackson Smith and Jigba. They have a whole offseason to prepare for the things that Geno Smith started to show as far as warts. I think that that's going to make their offense better. What do you think about, the prospects for this offense and, Geno Smith in year 2 as being a starter?
That receiving core is as good as there is in the league. When you look at the things that Metcalf and Lockett, and now you add Jackson Smith and Jigba, even though he's banged up, what they can do. And that offensive line really came alive last year. And it was a great combination of that receiving core with Kenneth Walker able to run the football. Geno Smith, look, I think he showed he was more than just lucked into a situation. He was so consistent for most of the year. He was efficient. He didn't try to do too much was the other thing. He stayed within himself and just ran the offense and let the playmakers do what they were supposed to do. And I think they're going to push the 49ers. The Niners still the favorite in the division, yeah, but because of that offense, I think Seattle's going to push San Francisco, and I think this is going to go down in December, that they're not going to go away. This is a 2-team race I see in the NFC West.
Careful talking about favorites and things like that. It gets Eric all excited. When you start mentioning those kind of betting terms, what is it, 6.5 on the Rams season total?
Second lowest in the NFL.
I mean, are they that bad, or is there some – listen, it's never a good sign when the wife of the quarterback saying, well, he doesn't have any guys to hang out with. He doesn't have a ping pong partner anymore. I don't think that's a good sign. But are the Rams really as bad as that win total would suggest?
Well, they got 2 games against the Cardinals, which will help, right? So you start there. Look, I think there's a bounce back. They had so many injuries last year. Kupp going down. Now there's a big turnover, and the Rams are still in salary cap hell for paying the price for winning that Super Bowl. Aaron Donald's going to return to form, I would think, right? Last year, I think, was a blip for him. But the offense ranked in the bottom third in the league. That has to improve. They have to find some balance, but at the same time, they lost a lot on defense. And again, paying the price for, they mortgaged for the future. They won the Super Bowl, but when you say bye to guys like Taylor Rapp and Mike Scott and Jalen Ramsey, Greg Gaines is gone, Troy Hill, Leonard Floyd, you go on and on with the losses they have defensively, you can see why that our friends in the desert don't think very much of the LA Rams.
I will hit you with one Cardinals question because it's the only question that really matters. They're going to have a high pick. They're going to have the worst record in the league, and their quarterback has a big contract. Is it Caleb Williams or is Kyler Murray going to be the guy for this team moving forward?
Jeffrey, that's a really good question because it appears, and we don't want to say they're tanking, right? But with some of the moves that they made, they trade Isaiah Simmons, DeAndre Hopkins gets let go. I don't know what their plan is. They're going out to start the season with Kyler hurt, with Josh Dobbs a quarterback. Is that what we're looking at? Well, you tell me what they're trying to do. Now, Caleb Williams could be a generational talent. He is a phenomenal quarterback and a prospect. He's clearly the number one pick in the draft coming up. Sometimes 2 and 2 equals 4. Just saying. I mean, they get rid of Colt McCoy also. They could have had a veteran quarterback. He's gone too. So have at it, Josh Dobbs.
Yeah. To be completely fair, though, playing Colt McCoy for 17 games is also tanking. Like there wasn't like we act like, and they have made this decision. But, to go, to get rid of Hopkins and to get rid of players. Like, look, this team drafted 3 players to play off-ball linebacker for them, and none of them are playing off-ball linebacker for them anymore. So it's in the first round. So this is ridiculous. To me, everybody was like, oh, wait, the Cardinals are tanking when they cut Colt McCoy. And I'm like, this thing has been like, what? This has been as plain as the nose on my face for 5 months that they're going to be terrible. Their win total is 2 less than everybody else. How long do we think that this rebuild takes? Because this is worse than Chicago. This looks worse than Detroit. They have longer to go than basically anybody that we've seen in the league since maybe Cleveland.
They've pretty much consistently been in a rebuild state for a long time. Okay, there was a couple of years where they had success, but for the most part, this is a barren franchise. And I think you have to press the reset button again, because right now with what they have, it's going to take at least 3 years, I think, for the Cardinals to be even a 500 to a playoff contender, just because they have so many deficiencies at so many spots. And when you just drop a player of Hopkins' stature or trade in Isaiah Simmons, what does that signal to everybody else in the locker room and your fan base that, hey, all right, we're going in a different direction from these guys, even though they're as good as there is in the league? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go even a step further. When your head coach is a guy who was just thrown off and gives up 2 touchdowns, has one of the most talented defenses you could have, and in the Super Bowl forgets to cover a guy just because he went back the other direction in motion twice, and that's the guy you couldn't let leave Arizona, and you had to make your head coach. Come on. Like, I got no help. Roxy is a Cal grad, for the record. Cal and Stanford. I know it's an NFL podcast. What happens to Cal and Stanford in the long run?
If you're going to put me on the spot, Soren, which you just did, I'm saying they're in the ACC before it's all said and done, which is as dumb as it sounds, right? Because the closest school to the Bay Area schools that's currently in the ACC, notice how I'm not including SMU for the time being, is Louisville. That is it, mileage-wise, the closest school to Cal and Stanford. It's just dumb. It's sad what's happening to the Pac-12. And Jeffrey, you spend a lot of time out here,
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's asinine that UCLA and Rutgers Penn State and USC are in the same conference, Central Florida and Arizona State. But welcome to college football 2024.
Makes you wish you were calling Cal basketball, right?
Not after last year. But hey, I'm a big believer in the Mad Dog. Things are turning around.
Okay. Roxy, you're the best, man. All things Bay Area. You hear him, see him on ESPN. He is everywhere. He's one of the best play-by-play guys in the business. Thanks for giving us some time tonight, Roxy. We appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
You got it, fellas. Thanks for having me. Have a good
He's
one.
the best. Roxy Bernstein joining us there and giving us the breakdown on the NFC West. I want to give a special nod to Eric Eager for having a second question about the Cardinals. That's it.
Of course.
There's your nod.
Look, if the tanking is like nerd nirvana, like they're the blank slate here.
Jeff said, I do have one question only about the Cardinals. I'm like, good, that's it.
Look,
somebody has one. Not Eric. I got another. Let's get in.
Been waiting.
Matthew, Brooke, everybody we've had on here has gotten like 25 minutes. This poor guy, because his division has two teams that are cupcakes this year. Yeah. He's going to get off. I'm not letting him get off in 14 minutes. Like we'll get
he's also the most experienced guy we've had on here. He's a walk and talk and soundbite. I mean, he knows how to say what he wants to say. He's as good as it gets as a broad. Not that the other folks aren't. We've had great people on breaking everything down. I appreciate everything, but Roxy's a wordsmith. He knows what he's doing. All right, let's move on. Now that we've gotten the taste of the Cardinals out of our mouths, let's get just real quick. I know we touched on a little bit about the Patriots. Here's what I want to say about the Mack Jones one quarterback thing. It can be done. Dak Prescott, they did it last year with the Cardinals, right? Or with the Cowboys. But like last year, when I start to see these quirky things again, the Patricia thing was it. It's over. It's done. Bill Belichick's done. And nobody wants to say it, partially because Tom Brady kept burning everybody's ass when they tried to say Tom Brady was done. I think this is different. I think it's over. Like Bill Belichick will hum along at 8-9, 9-8, 6-11, 10-7. And go to the playoffs, and everybody will think he'll be back. He will limp along until he breaks Don Shula's record, but the idea of him challenging for a championship is over. Jeff, tell me I'm wrong.
Look, I won't go that far into it because I think he's still a pretty good coach. But what he's doing is he's flexing, and he's letting everybody know, I'm going to be here until I get Don Shula's record. Everybody knows it. Bob Kraft is not going to get rid of me before that happens. So I've got, like 40 wins to go to get there, about 5 more years. And that's what happens. I've said this before. Al Davis said this a long time ago when I first started covering football. He said, look, most head coaches in this league got about 10 years at any given place. And then the message gets old, the buy-in starts to fade, all the scheming, all the ideas, go out the window, and you're just kind of hanging on. That's what he's doing. He's hanging on. He's still got a pretty good defense, but the stuff he's done the last couple of years and misreading the Brady situation, he's had a tough 3-4 year go here.
If he were just coaching, he'd be better. But with all that success comes all kinds of extra power, and it's that gets him into problems. Eric, am I wrong?
No, I mean, look, and every time we talk about this, talk about Belichick, one of the best, GMs of all time, best head coach of all time. I don't know what edge he has over the rest of the league anymore. I think he can scheme really good defense. That's certainly an edge that he has. I don't know how important that is anymore. He can't really draft anymore. Like we have not seen him outperform the competition in the draft for forever. And free agency, when he's dipped his toe in, he's been 50%, right? Matthew Judon is fantastic. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, not so much. And, Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker. And yes, he deserves to play out the string as long as he wants to, but that doesn't mean we have to bet on his team at all, because I just don't. I just see it as a normal NFL football team now, which is sad, but that's the truth. I don't think he's a bad head coach. I just don't know if he has an edge over the league anymore.
All right, if you want an edge when it comes to your parking lot, Gan Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems
Kansas City.
disappear since 1994. I think I got the right side. Gan Asphalt and Concrete. Don't risk your parking lot. Don't have accidents, liability problems out there. Get it restriped, get it seal coated. Cold weather's coming. They do it all, everything from building new to handling any kind of problems. All things parking lots, one contractor. Gan Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. Johnathan Taylor is still a Colt. Jeff, what does this mean, big picture? And how does it end with Johnathan Taylor and the Colts?
It ends ugly. I think it remains ugly. I don't understand. Well, I guess I do understand. The way they've operated over there for the last year and a half was prelude to this. And so, unfortunately, Johnathan Taylor is a casualty in the way they're being run. But if you don't want to keep him, or if you're going to play the franchise tag with him next year, your owners come out and pretty much said, we're not giving him a deal. We're not talking about a deal at this stage of the game. Take the best deal on the table and move on. Like, if running backs are that's what I don't understand. If running backs are that, disposable,
right?
Go find a new one. Take the best deal you can get and go find a new one. That's what I don't get.
Well, that's the whole thing that's really ticking me off here is that, like, Irsay and then Ballard today too, where he's like, what was the end statement? It's like, why haven't they paid him yet? And he's like, we won 4 games, which is like, to me, a flippant kind of answer. But my thing is like the Colts are trying to like flirt with this running backs don't matter paradigm, right? And yet like they'll say stuff that's like, oh, we love Johnathan, we'd love to have him in the mix, and then like self-destruct in an answer like 5 minutes later, because I don't think they believe either side. I think they're being like, oh, running backs don't matter as like a convenient excuse not to pay him, but they actually don't necessarily believe in what it's actually going to have to take to act that way. And so then they say all these things to Johnathan Taylor, which end up being like superfluous and dumb that I don't really so it's just a weird thing that like they just don't have a plan here.
I don't usually like saying things secondhand, but I trust the people that are saying it. The Zone, the midday show on my station today, I was talking about where somewhere it was reported that the asking price for Johnathan Taylor from the Dolphins, the reason it broke down for the Dolphins, that one, the Packers were involved, but the asking price was Jalen Waddle and picks from the Dolphins.
Yeah. Which you're not being serious at that point.
Yeah. If he's worth that much to you, just sign him.
Right. Right. I mean, and I feel bad for Chris Ballard, but I almost wonder, like, have you decided you can never work as a GM again, and this is it, and no matter what, you've got to make it go there? Like, if working,
I will say, look at the
get sideways with your owner. You don't want to get sideways real quick. You don't want to get sideways with your owner, and so you have to be a loyal soldier as a general manager. But come on, man.
Not that many general managers get second NFL jobs. So that's like the whole, because I think, I talk to my friends a lot in the league, and I'm like, there's certain moves that people make, and they'll say something like, well, when I get my chance, I'm going to tell my owner not to do this, right? And we're all like, okay, it's like, if you got a 4-year, $12 million deal, and that's on the low end, you're going to be carrying water, I think, for the owner. So it's just a really tough, position that he's been put in. It's not helping, though, not to have the message. Like, Ballard was kind of embarrassing today as far as like what he said, how conflicting it was and how kind of inhumane it sounded too. Like, he was like, oh, did Andrew Luck struggle to develop without a great runner? It's like, well, no, but that offensive line that Ryan Grigson put around him was sure, contributed. Like, it's like, think for 3 seconds before you answer some of these questions, buddy.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's talk about Chris Jones, not in Kansas City. The general manager, Brett Veach, did a Zoom press conference today, talked about Chris Jones. He was asked directly about where it is. He said conversations have picked up over the last couple of days. He's hopeful he'll be there the first week. If people are Chiefs fans, they can catch our Red, Gold, and Bold podcast that we do as well. We talked about this there. Jeff, let's be honest. Does Chris Jones play for the Chiefs in week 1 against the Lions in your mind?
I don't think he plays. Yeah. There's a chance he's
here. Is he back but doesn't play, or not back?
I think there's a chance he's back and doesn't play. I think they're too deep into the process at this stage to put him out there, no matter what kind of shape. He's 30 years old. Like, people talk about Aaron Donald doing this 5-6 years ago with 17, 18 seasons. Aaron Donald was like 24, 25 years old then. It's a 5-year difference. I don't know about putting a guy out there, if he's here at that age, and expecting good things to happen. So in my mind, it's going to take at least a couple games for him to get going, to get back into a place where he can be something close to what we're used to seeing with Chris Jones. But that's also, being optimistic that he's here. Again, the question that was asked to Brett Veach was, do you think he's going to be here? And he said, yeah, I feel pretty good. Or I think he said, we're hopeful that he'll be here. And I got to hear, yeah, he's going to be here before I start believing it.
Okay. Eric, what do you think happens?
I've been wrong this whole time, but I will still say that he'll play.
That's not going to stop you from having it.
No, it never has. I'm gonna say that he plays sparingly week 1.
Okay. Yeah, I think if they're talking, somebody in that mix wants to get a deal done, and therefore I think a deal will get done. But it's a lot. I mean, to start losing $1.1 million every game. I mean, that's an incentive to get things done, right? Yeah. I mean, Aaron Donald held out right up till this point, and then Aaron Donald would come in.
But see, I think that's where we disagree. I don't think him coming in is contingent on a deal now. I think he wants his money for this season.
Okay.
And so you're talking about, still, he's going to make almost $20 million this year, and you risk affecting your franchise tag for the following season, losing leverage there. I feel like he's thinking, and probably what his team figured out early on in this process when they wanted to start holding out, was we start getting to real games. That's real money that you want to hold on to. Let's not lose that. Let's make sure that we are keeping that in tow here.
Yeah. What are the Chiefs without Chris Jones? Jeff, we heard Dan Orlovsky of ESPN said they will struggle to make the playoffs without Chris Jones. Would you go that far?
I wouldn't go that far, but they're not a championship team without him. I would not say they would win a Super Bowl without Chris Jones playing this season and being happy. He affects too much of their defense.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big part. He's their best player for sure on that side of the ball. Eric, what do you think of those comments?
Yeah, they're not correct, but I mean that we're in the time of year where if you don't pick you have to sort of have a hot take and stuff like that. But I agree with Jeff that they're worse. I don't agree with Jeff that they can't win the Super Bowl without him. I think it's going to be a lot harder. You've already seen the point spread go down 0.5 point in the week 1 game between the Lions and the Chiefs. And so over the course of the season, that adds up a little bit. But I still think, with Mahomes, you're always kind of a Super Bowl contender, but you're obviously more confident with Jones.
It should be pointed out, they are still a 6-point favorite over the team that's favored to win the NFC North, right? Like, the odds makers either think he's going to play or they don't think it matters that much.
Well, no non-quarterback has ever really moved the point spread by himself.
Wow.
I don't know at that point.
Yeah.
Doesn't it also factor in Andy Reid's record in openers? And that kind of
all that
line.
Mahomes is like never thrown an interception on opening day, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's talk about the Dolphins. Speaking of defensive tackles, Christian Wilkins' deal doesn't get done. It seemed like every defensive tackle was getting paid or holding out. What's your reaction to the Dolphins not getting Wilkins done, Jeff?
It's probably a more civil example of what Chris Jones has been going through with the Chiefs. That the way I read it was they've tabled it. He's coming in and being a good soldier and wanting to say the right things. They still feel like he's got value for them, but it's Christian Wilkins is an interesting player just because he's got some good numbers, but he hasn't really been the kind of dominant player that they were expecting to get. All those Clemson guys came out around the same time. Like they've all sort of been, except for Dexter Lawrence, kind of been in the same boat. And so I feel like he's, like a lot of guys, probably asking for too much money and finding out that sometimes teams don't want to pay that to you.
Eric, what do you think? I know you and I have talked about him a number of different times when different trade things would come about. According to PFF, he was the 9th best defensive tackle last year. That's one spot higher than Jeffrey Simmons, who got paid. That's not the end all be all. He's not the pass rusher. Jeff's right. He has not been, he's not Vince Wilfork. He's a fine player, but he's not a game wrecker. Or is that not giving him enough credit? Are the Dolphins making a mistake here?
I think he's like 2 years ago, I think in my wins above replacement metric, he was like 3rd among defensive linemen. I think he's really good. He holds a point of attack for them. Like, you can't run these Fangio style defenses without a 3-tech like him, right? Because if the guy's too small, he's going to get run over. If the guy's too big, you're not going to be able to rush the passer with 4. So he is a very good player in the context of that defense. It's not flashy, but it's more of an all-around guy. I think he's quite good. If he were to command the 25 million-ish that we thought Chris Jones was going to end up with, it wouldn't make me all that upset. I think he was worth that for the last few years.
Yeah. Okay. The Dolphins need him. I do appreciate this comment, by the way. I love this podcast. It's the perfect evolution of beard growth. Yeah. I guess.
And I think, unfortunately, hair loss too. I think, but hey, if you're a hair loss shampoo sponsor, come and get us.
Yeah. Hit up Eric. Eric's looking for a product. Go for it. Yeah, I like that. All right, let's turn our attention to the Bills. Von Miller on the PUP list. Jeff, how much does this set back what the Buffalo Bills want to do, and how concerned are you about them as a contender right now?
I don't think it sets them back that much because you want him for the long haul. That's really, if they said we could have him for the last 4 games by doing this, or the playoffs by doing this, I think they would happily take that. I think they obviously huge blow last year by losing him at Thanksgiving and not having him available for the playoffs in the stretch run. I never thought that he was going to be out there in week 1, given his age, given the timing of that injury, given the position he plays. So, I think he'll be fine. I think they will be fine defensively. The bigger question for the Bills is, are they going to be able to take all this talk about Josh Allen not doing too much and Stephon Diggs being in the right place, even though he had all these huge meltdowns in the offseason and postseason? Is the defense going to be better with Sean McDermott? They have a lot bigger questions than Von Miller's health. If they can answer those questions, they'll be fine.
Okay. Eric, what do you think about this? Is this a sign that he's not going to really be able to get much at all this year? Or is this them just playing it safe and like Jeff said, playing for the long haul?
Yeah, Von Miller's got a great life now. He's got the Dwight Freeney, Melvin Ingram kind of come off the street and get some heat on the quarterback, play time. And then he's got the Von Miller contract. This is a good gig if you can get it down the stretch of your edge career, right? No, I think if anything, this makes Buffalo stronger because, if we have any evidence with Von Miller, he's not a full season guy anymore. But when he comes in, he can be a difference maker for a team that is trying to win a championship. And this Bills team is trying to win a championship. Rousseau has been, pretty good, but they, now get to test him out. He had a high ankle sprain at the end of last year, in addition to Miller's ACL. So that hurt their pass rush. So they want to develop him as a star pass rusher. Same thing with Ed Oliver, who they signed to a big contract. They got to figure out their secondary. I think Von Miller being out for the first few weeks is kind of Patriots-like, in that they can figure out the rest of the defense without the crutch that his pass rush prowess provides.
I think that's a fair point. They open at the Jets. That's a tough game and an important game because they figure to be fighting it out with the Jets this year. That figures to be, along with the Dolphins, the competition. But Raiders at Commanders, whatever you think of the Commanders, Dolphins. That's two of their two biggest rivals are in that 4, and he's not going to play. So I do think it's significant. And they've had, I don't know, I can't decide if the Bills have been flying under the radar and we're just not hearing anything about them, and so that's a good thing. Or if it's I don't know, there's nothing to really celebrate.
They kind of remind me, guys, of the 06 Colts. When you think about the 03 Colts got snake bitten in Foxborough with bad weather. 04 Colts got snake bitten with bad weather in Foxborough. Then so that's Buffalo, KC, right? And then the Colts team in 05 get beat by a lower seed, the Steelers, right? And Nick Harper gets tackled by Big Ben, and the Vanderjack miss. And by the time we get to 06, we're all like, forget this team. It can't get over the hump. All this stuff we're talking about with Buffalo. And they won it from the 3 seed that year. Got hung some luck. And we always talk about this, Petro, on your show. Like the Bills, you can make they have the best point differential the last 2 years. You can make a very good case that they've been the best team in the NFL the last 2 years. But you rarely win the Super Bowl when you're the best team, right? So I think now they're kind of, in many people's eyes, they're worse than the Eagles, Niners, Bengals, and of course the Chiefs. And so for them, it's like they are under the radar. But I think that they're, every bit as strong as they've been for the past few years. And people are just ignoring them now because they're sick of them getting a ton of hype and then never actually even, getting to the Super Bowl even.
Yeah, a lot to be gained by being honest with yourself. Like, and that reference to 2006 Colts team is legit because they had to realize we got to play better defense.
Yeah.
And we don't have to always be a dominant, 400-yard a game passing team. They got Joseph Adai and ran the ball more consistently. They became a grittier team and won championship because of that.
And another parallel, Bob Sanders that year played 4 regular season games, found his way into the playoffs. That was a team that, even though in the playoffs they played tremendous defense, I remember, even the Ravens game was really, and the Chiefs, of course, they held the Chiefs out of the end zone in that game, I think, if I remember correctly. And then, they played, they got some good plays in the games against like the Bears. They had a pick 6 and stuff in the Super Bowl. But like Bob Sanders, of course, comes back late, turns that whole thing around, a la Von Miller, who, let's say he sits out half the year. It's kind of a very similar idea where one of your stars comes in and reinforces after the rest of your team has earned, taken its lumps when you're not there. Like, I think that there's a parallel there as well.
I wouldn't have some of this, but Nick asked if they don't win this year, is McDermott fired? I mean, it would have to be a disaster.
No, but the rest of that division, and this is what worries me if I'm betting Buffalo this year. The rest of that division very well could be in you don't win and you're out. I think, look, in New York last year, they lose 6 in a row to end the season. Yep. Both guys keep their job. Douglas has, the quarterback failure with Zach Wilson, gets another shot because he drafted both rookies of the year last year. But make no mistake, if the Jets don't win, Salah and Douglas are probably not staying around. I think Miami, Chris Greer, right? They put it all on Brian Flores, the first firing. And if they don't get over the hump this year, I think they're going to look to him before they look to McDaniel. And then when you look at New England, like, I think there's a better than long shot chance that if they don't win, Belichick is coaching in Arizona next year or something like that, coaching in Dallas, something like that. So I think the AFC East is full of teams where it's do or die.
Nick said McDermott reminds me of Marty, except for he's got a better quarterback. I don't think that's fair to Marty Schottenheimer. That may be it's Marty's fault for not emphasizing quarterback play more. But yeah, I think, I'll stick up for Marty Schottenheimer, not at the expense of McDermott. I think McDermott's a fine coach. We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. I'll let them know you heard about them right here on the 2 Deep podcast. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. Trey Lance is a Dallas Cowboy, Jeff, for only a 4th-round pick. Lots of consternation on the Talking Head shows this week about the fact that, not that Trey Lance went there, and by the way, I've never seen a collection of people talk past each other more than I heard when this trade went down. Not that he went there, but that Jerry Jones made a point. I don't know why this shocks anybody, that he did talk to no one. He did this deal. It's his deal. He didn't need to talk to anyone. Yeah. But Dak Prescott kind of fueled the fire when he said, no one told me. I'm not surprised by it. I've been here a long time. This is how things work around here. The trade, first of all, do you like it for the Cowboys to bring in an upside backup quarterback? And are you okay with how they handled it?
First of all, I thought if that's what he went for, why would the Denver Broncos not make that deal? Like a team that is in a much more precarious situation with their quarterback and could use a guy who might be developed into a decent player. The move to me is weird just because the big knock on Trey Lance is that he has no experience. I don't know how he's going to get experience playing for a team that has a quarterback who's been entrenched there for the last 8 years. So unless Dak Prescott gets hurt, unless they get into a weird place where they're not happy with him and want to see what Trey Lance can do, which I don't think is going to happen, Trey Lance is going to continue to have the same problem to develop. So that's the first thing I think about it. And the second thing, part of me suspects that Jerry Jones watched the Philadelphia Eagles turn Jalen Hurts from a project into an MVP candidate quarterback and made the Super Bowl. And he's probably thinking, we can sit on this guy. If Dak wants to ask for too much money, this can be our Jalen Hurts. Now, again, it's a long shot, but it's the only thing that would make sense about making this kind of move because, again, I don't see where the payoff for Trey Lance is going to be anything unless he's getting on the field for a decent amount of time.
I love the move. The upside for a 4th-round pick. I don't think he's played that bad in San Francisco. I think it's been, I think this is a very good move for them. And I for a 4th-round pick, I don't get it. That's easy pickings to go get a guy like this. And I don't think it's a bad idea to think, Jeff. I think you make a great point about was he thinking, okay, Dak's owed $60 million next year.
Yeah.
$60 million, right? How many conference championship games has he played in?
Yeah,
it's irrelevant.
I get that part of it. Yeah.
Snicker if you must, Eric, but that's a relevant point.
No, I like it. I mean, the thing about Lance is he's probably going to play. Dak has not played a full season for a few years in a row. He's actually kind of a bad injured quarterback, meaning he was lighting the world on fire first few weeks of 21. He gets hurt. Cooper Rush wins a game in his stead. By the end of season, he's not efficient really at all. Last year, similar idea, leads league in interceptions despite missing 5 games. Lance is going to get on the field. I kind of agree with Petro. Everybody talks about Lance and how he's been a failure. Well, he was on the Mahomes track. Started a couple games as a rookie. Starts week 1, it's a monsoon in Chicago. Week 2, he's injured in the first few drives. Really, he hasn't failed, right? And other than what Shanahan sees, and I got to be honest with everybody, Shanahan, I don't trust Shanahan's player evaluation. It's his schemes and stuff, they're great. His play calling, great. We're talking about a guy who drafted Solomon Thomas over Patrick Mahomes. We're talking about a guy who drafts Trey Sermon in round 3 and then Elijah Mitchell in round 6, and it's Elijah Mitchell's immediately better than him. Joe Williams, the guy he drafted over, and then Raheem Mostert beat him out in 5 minutes. It's I don't trust the guy's player evaluation. I trust the guy's ability to to call a game. But player evaluation, people are giving him way too much deference here.
Well, I said this with Roxy, Jeff, and I mean it. If you think you made a mistake, being willing to admit it, the kind of mistake that they made, and move on from it, I celebrate and appreciate, and it's a sign of strength and confidence that you know what you're doing. But if he goes and blows up someplace else, you're a jackass. There's no way around it. To spend all that, not get it from him, then watch him develop someplace else is really grounds for termination unless Brock Purdy is the next Tom Brady, or at least taking you to conference championship games on a regular basis. You can't be wrong when you trade the guy. That can't happen.
Well, what's interesting, on that side of it with San Francisco, it was a mess. It was a mess from the start. The investment that they made and to be looking at this 3 years later and saying, let's just throw up our hands. That's probably one of the worst picks ever, right? In terms of what you got for that return. But on the Dallas side of it, what's intriguing for me is the timetable here, because you mentioned the money owed to Dak, but Trey Lance is going his 3rd year. So next year, you got to figure out, are you giving him a 5th-year option? And with the money they got to pay to people on that, they got to pay Micah Parsons, got to pay Trayvon Diggs, got to pay a lot of people over CeeDee Lamb. Or do you want to have that much money tied up in your quarterback position? And so, it's starting to trend towards they may have to take a gamble and go with Trey Lance as their quarterback if they're not crazy about Dak and that number he's going to be getting from his contract.
But I think
that's a huge gamble.
But I think from a value standpoint, and this is why I always made the case for Minnesota, because I think Minnesota was in a more natural place for Lance, because Lance is from there and like all this stuff. And Kirk's deal is done after this year. But Dallas is not going to be bad enough to pick a quarterback who is going to be the second coming, right? And a 4th round pick is less than what you'd have to pay to move up from, let's say, 22, where they're going to pick from probably, all the way down to 4 to get to Drake May or something like that, right? So this, like, in some ways, it's a drop in the bucket to get Trey Lance. And then if he ends up looking good, you kind of, now you don't quite have this because of the contract, but you sort of have drafted the next guy and much cheaper than what it costs to like move up from the mid-20s to the like 3 or 4 to get the second quarterback or even first to get the quarterback that you care about. So to me, the cost, to Petro's point, is just a drop in the bucket, and it gives them the opportunity to forego the draft next year if they go sour on Dak Prescott.
Yeah, but how do you find out if he's good though? That's the question.
Well,
right?
I think internally, I mean, how did the Packers find out Jordan Love was? I mean, I'm going to show my cards here, but like I think Jordan Love's going to be pretty freaking good this year. How did the Packers figure that out? Like, it's just through practice, right? Like seeing him every day, seeing how he conducts himself, and you can be like, you can be one of the reasons he conducts himself a different way. Like, I'm guessing if even a small fraction of the rumors about Shanahan not being all in on the Lance pick are true, that gets to the young quarterback, right? In the mannerisms and how you behave around him, how you treat him, how you talk about him. Like we've all had that, right? And so if it's a different vibe in Dallas and they actually like build him up and see him, it could be something like Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love or something like that, where they see it in practice and they don't necessarily have to see it in the game.
Do we have to wonder if Kyle Shanahan wants to be the juice, right? Like he wants to be the guy. And I'm not saying that Trey Lance is going to go, become a Patrick Mahomes. But don't you got to wonder a little bit? Like he almost like his dad was so great at just going through the running backs. Now it's once they walked away from Terrell Davis, it was Orlandis Gary, it was Mike Anderson, it was just one right at Reuben Drones, it was one right after another. Is he like and that kind of added back then? The running back was still more important. That kind of added to the mystique that his father had. Is that part of the game here? Is like, I can do it with anybody. I'm going to go to the playoffs with the most quarterbacks. Like I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit odd.
Wrong too. Like we've seen him play Brian Hoyer. We've seen him play CJ Beathard. We like the other part of the Niners making the conference title game every year is they either do that or they lose 10 games. And they've done that every single season since 2015 and every season but one since 2011. When they lose the 10 games, it's, Jimmy G got hurt. And it's CJ. Like, Brock Purdy has been the exception to this, like, it's the exception, not the rule. Like, most of the time when he has to play Nick Mullins, it doesn't go that great. Yeah. And I think people, like, over-indexed on what Brock Purdy did and what Jimmy Garoppolo did, which Jimmy Garoppolo is a second-round pick, $30 million quarterback. Like, everybody acts like he's a bum that Shanahan got over the hump. No, CJ Beathard's a bum. And he wasn't able to actually get any good production out of him because he's not actually a guy that can make anybody a good quarterback.
Yeah. But he has a type, though. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He definitely has a
and
type.
Lance is not that.
All right, let's finish with this. Joe Burrow did come back to practice. When I wrote this question, he still hadn't practiced. And we had the comment where Zach Taylor was asked about him, like, hey, is this a hold-in, was basically what the question was. Does this have to do with his contract? And he said no. And to me, that jumped out. It's like, okay, then he's hurt. Either way, this isn't good. Either you've got contract problems, he's not practicing because of that, or he's still hurt. He did practice today. So I think that's of note, which to me then shines the light back on his contract, Jeff. Should Bengals fans be concerned that they haven't gotten a deal done with Joe Burrow yet? And we're not on the eve of the season beginning, but we're not far from
it. I wouldn't panic yet about this kind of a negotiation. I mean, there's probably concern because of the Bengals, their history with being cheap, and maybe that's factoring into this. But everything I've heard suggests that Burrow is definitely willing to do a deal that would help allow him to hold on to the people around him that have helped make him successful. The Jamar Chases, the T. Higgins, people like that. But, it is a little bit strange that it's not done yet. It's been over a month and a half since the Chargers did their deal, and the numbers are out there. You know what the market value is. And if he's willing to play ball with you, it shouldn't be that hard to get done. Now, I totally believe that him not practicing has everything to do with that deal not being done, because you saw a video of him running before games and doing stuff and calf strains. If it was really a big deal, they would have said it's a big deal. So I think the deal will get done at some point. He'll be fine on the field. But it's weird that it hasn't been done yet.
Eric, what do you think about the contract of Joe Burrow being undone right now?
Yeah, what I'm hearing on the ground in Cincy is that Burrow is pretty healthy, and he has been for a couple weeks, and this is part of that, right? This is part of the deal. The Bengals are a pay-as-you-go franchise. Duke Tobin is not going to do some of the stuff that Cleveland's going to do, or even Baltimore's going to do, which is put out void years, extend it out. It's got to be, as Jeff said, kind of a Mahomes deal where the effective guarantees are pretty high, but they're in a rolling fashion. So Burrow's not getting $200 million in his lap when he signs. So that is tough, because that takes, in Kansas City, Brant Tillis did that. That took a decent amount of crafting. I'm assuming in Cincinnati, they're going to have to put a similar deal together. That's probably not as easy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, the Bengals could screw up a good thing. I mean, they've done it a lot in their franchise history, and it's amazing. And I don't see how this isn't done. You have had all the numbers necessary to make this happen. And this isn't Christian Wilkins. This isn't even Chris Jones. This isn't Johnathan Taylor. This is what I think the consensus would tell you is the second best quarterback in the NFL, at least, because he's 3-1 against the guy that's considered the best. I don't know how this could be undone right now. I think it's ridiculous. And if Cincinnati Bengals fans aren't rioting, they're asleep because it's insane. Listen, it's ridiculous to let your parking lot go and be unsafe for your customers if you own or run a business. Why risk accidents and liability in your parking lot? Get your parking lot restriped today. Brightly striped lots will cut down on accidents and keep your parking lot as safe as possible and save you from any liability issues with your business. Find out more at GANasphalt.com. That's GANasphalt.com. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Two Deep NFL Podcast.